Bienvenido al 51 Congreso de Investigación y Desarrollo, la plataforma anual en donde se comparte el conocimiento y se distingue lo mejor de la investigación científica y tecnológica que se desarrolla en el TEC de Monterrey. Desde el 2020 atravesamos por una pandemia que está originando muchos retos. Para el TEC de Monterrey, la investigación es ahora más indispensable que nunca y el talento científico de nuestros investigadores es una parte medular de la institución, pues las contribuciones impactan de manera positiva en la comunidad. Pero, ¿cómo nos hemos reinventado para dar continuidad a la labor científica?
Ante los grandes retos que estamos enfrentando con la pandemia, las y los investigadores del TEC hemos continuado con nuestras actividades de investigación, adaptándonos y encontrando los caminos. Todo gracias al compromiso que sentimos y al apoyo de la institución.
En este tiempo de grandes retos, los investigadores nos hemos reinventado y adaptado, porque nuestro compromiso y nuestra pasión siguen siendo contribuir a la generación de conocimiento. Deseamos encontrar nuevas soluciones a los problemas de nuestra comunidad a través de la investigación.
Trabajar en investigación y generar conocimiento siempre ha sido una actividad retadora. Pero en los momentos en los que estamos viviendo, los retos se vuelven más grandes. Y son retos a los cuales debemos enfrentarnos con mucha entereza, sin bajar los brazos. Se puede seguir avanzando en el conocimiento. La sociedad requiere de estos avances del conocimiento. Busquemos las formas, las colaboraciones para hacer que nuestra investigación ayude a resolver los grandes problemas de la humanidad.
Ahora más que nunca, los investigadores del TEC hemos generado y adaptado nuestros proyectos para buscar soluciones a los nuevos retos que está provocando la pandemia. Esto significa que el impacto de la investigación sigue trascendiendo. También hemos reforzado nuestra capacidad de adaptarnos y de seguir descubriendo, aún en la adversidad.
Y es que en la adversidad los retos se magnifican.
Y es cuando descubrimos de qué estamos hechos.
Por eso, hoy más que nunca, en el TEC de Monterrey,
seguimos haciendo investigación que transforma vidas.
Ustedes bienvenidos. Welcome everyone. Good afternoon, Bertil and Aaron. I'll start in Spanish and switch to English in a while. En nombre del Tecnológico de Monterrey quisiera darles la más cordial bienvenida a nuestro 51º Congreso de Investigación y Desarrollo. El Congreso de Investigación para nosotros es una plataforma de innovación abierta cuyo objetivo es reunir a los principales actores en la sociedad para dar solución a los retos, a los problemas que nos aquejan, por ejemplo, nuestra pandemia actual. Este es un congreso interdisciplinario donde participan, por supuesto, profesores, alumnos de las diferentes escuelas y áreas nacionales, ingeniería, salud, negocios, gobierno, ciencias sociales, humanidades, educación, arte y diseño. Durante estos 3 días, tenemos programadas sesiones, eventos de networking que estoy seguro enriquecerán estos objetivos con una visión nacional e internacional, con preguntas de carácter social, con problemas de carácter social y económico por parte de gobiernos, empresas, asociaciones de la sociedad civil que nos acompañan en este evento. Espero participen todos activamente en estos eventos y para hablar de la sesión muy rápidamente voy a retomar el inglés. Now I will switch to English. The objective of this very first session, the Nobel session, is twofold. First, to understand the general elements of the Nobel Prize, and this will be discussed and presented by Professor Bertil Anderson. And second, Professor Chichanover, Nobel Prize in Chemistry 2004, will share with us his vision in the near future for the research. Thank you so much. we will present a short video of presenting Professor Bertil Anderson. Adelante con el video, por favor.
Professor Bertil Anderson is a plant biochemist of international reputation. He was educated at Umeå and Lund universities in Sweden. From 1996 to 2003, he became Dean of the Faculty of Chemical Sciences at the University of Stockholm. In 1999, he was the president of Linköping University, Sweden, until the end of 2003. From 2004 to 2007, he joined the European Science Foundation in Strasbourg as its chief executive. Professor Anderson was appointed NTU's first provost in April 2007 and was installed as NTU's third president on July 1, 2011. From 1989 to 1997, he was member of the Nobel Committee for Chemistry, chair in 1997, later becoming a member of the Nobel Foundation, 2000 to 2006, and he is currently a member of the Board of Trustees of the Nobel Foundation and also continues as professor of biochemistry.
Welcome everyone to this second Nobel session here in Monterrey. Of course, we are not all in Monterrey. At this time of the year, we actually had the first Nobel session with Professor Nobel Prize winner Ada Younat from Israel, who gave a talk to a big audience there, several thousand people. So this year we are continuing this. You can say we are creating a tradition of another Nobel Prize winner. It so happens that there is another Israeli Nobel Prize winner, Aaron Chechanover. And the difference, of course, this year is that we are not there in beautiful Monterrey, but we are doing this via Zoom because of the pandemics, as we all know. Last year, I also gave a short introduction about the Nobel Prize, because I think it's a very interesting prize, and it has remained through 120 years, the prize of the prizes. And why is that? So let me give you some introduction to that before Professor Aaron Chechanover is giving his talk. So can I have the next picture, please? So when we talk about the Nobel Prizes, it's not one prize. So every year there are 6 prizes giving out. One in physics, one in chemistry, one in medicine. These are the science prizes. But there was also one in literature and one in peace. And actually one could add also economics to it. So you could say there are sort of 6 Nobel Prizes here. And of course, Professor Chechanover, who is here with us today, won the Nobel Prize in Chemistry 2004. Next slide, please. So the prize is giving out the same day each year, and that is the 10th of December in Stockholm and Oslo, in the midst of the harsh Scandinavian winter, in the midst of the darkness. And that's why this was the day that the donor, Alfred Nobel, passed away. And since then, you give out this Nobel Prize. Next slide, please. Alfred Nobel, of course, he's very central here. He was the donator. He made this possible. And he had this vision of giving a high-level scientific or cultural prize to the most worthy person. Not only did he have the vision to do that, but he also had the money, because he was a very rich man, and he gave most of his belongings to this prize. Alfred Nobel was a very interesting person. He was a researcher and technologist, but he was also an entrepreneur and inventor. Of course, what he invented, as we probably know, nitroglycerin and then dynamite. And these were very timely discoveries at that time, at the mid of the 19th century, because you can then build infrastructure. And particularly his invention was very important when you build the railway lines all over the world. So he earned a lot of money on that. He was Swedish, but he was a dedicated internationalist, and that tailored his prize. So he lived in Ukraine, he lived in Paris, he lived in Italy, and he actually also visited Mexico once when he was a business person. But of course, today we remember him mostly because he's the big donator that made the Nobel Prize be realized. Next slide, please. So here is his will. Alfred Nobel died in 1896, but he made his will 1 year before in 1895. And you see that although this was a very big will with a lot of money, you see it was quite modest. It was written, scribbled on a piece of paper, and you could see he had scribbled here and there and so on. But the essence of this will was that it is my express wish that in awarding the prizes, no consideration be given to the nationality of the candidates, but that the most worthy shall receive it, whether he is Scandinavian or not. And this was written in an era of a very high nationalism. Maybe, unfortunately, we can say we are living in such an era again. But Alfred Nobel really took an international view. And it was even so that the Swedish king was very angry with him because doing this, that he had acted unpatriotic to give the prizes to foreigners. I often get the question, why do you think Nobel Prize became so important? I think one of the reasons it was that it was the first international prize that could go to anyone. It was given out in Sweden, but it was truly international. Next slide, please. As I mentioned, this will contain the 5 prizes: physics, chemistry, medicine, literature, and peace. But as I mentioned in the beginning, there's a 6th prize. It's the Economics Nobel Prize. To be honest, or to be very strict, it's not the real Nobel Prize. It's a prize in memory of Alfred Nobel, because that was installed much later, as late as 1969. But no one makes any difference between the classical prizes and the economics prize. And I think that's okay. Next slide. Next picture. So how do you select the prize winners? It's very important. And of course, that is another reason why the prizes still are the prize is the price of the prizes has been done very thoroughly. And you can maximally give it to 3 persons 1 year in one prize. So it could be 3 people sharing the Nobel Prize. There could also be only one prize winner, or it can be 2 that share. So it could even be 2 that get half and 1 get a quarter and so on. The prize sum, not bad, is 9 million Swedish krona. That is over 20 million pesos. Not bad sum of money. Another thing, you cannot give the prize winner must be alive. So it cannot be given to someone that has been deceased, and you give the prize in honor of that person 5 years later. Next slide, please. And so how do you do that? The ones who select this is the Nobel Prize Committee. And there is one Nobel Prize Committee for each area of the prizes. So there are actually, you could say, 6 Nobel Prize Committees, 1 for each prize. And for every year, people around the world can nominate for Nobel Prizes. And all nominations has to come in by the 31st of January each year. And who can nominate? Everyone cannot nominate, but previous prize winners, for example, Scandinavia's professor in chemistry, for example, or physics, representative of selected international centers of excellence, MIT, Imperial, Cambridge, and so on, and Max Planck. And then there is handpicked top international scientists that are experts in their field. And typically 1 year, you get 400 nominations. And of course, then it's a lot of work to find the prize for that year out of these 400 nominations. Next slide, please. So if we look back in history, the prizes has now been on for almost for over 120 years. So there are 919 individuals who have received it. 24 organizations has also been awarded the Nobel Prize. But organizations can only receive the prize in peace. All the other prizes are given to individuals. Also, some laureates have won 2 Nobel Prizes. It's very unusual, maybe a handful of people that has more than 1 Nobel Prize. No one has ever received 3 Nobel Prizes. It's only 58 of these 919 individuals. There are only 58 women, and of course 6%. And I think that is sort of a little bit of a stain on the history of the Nobel Prize. I think things are getting better now, but of course the Nobel Prize also reflects the academic community through the last 120 years. Next slide, please. Mexican Nobel Prize winners. We are now having this conference from Tec de Monterrey in Mexico, and there are Mexican Nobel Prize winners, 3 to be precise. Alfonso Garcia got the Peace Prize in 1982. Octavio Paz got the Literature Prize in 1990. And so far the only science prize to Mexico is Mario Molina, who was one of the discoveries of the ozone hole. And this was, of course, a very important prize. You could say you lifted chemistry out in the environmental chemistry. So this was high-level molecular chemistry, but applied to mega systems. And we must all recognize that Mario Molina probably is one of the giant Mexican scientists. Unfortunately, he passed away only less than half a year ago, sadly. And of course, we are all waiting for another Mexican Nobel Prize winner. And of course, today we all should agree that that 4th Nobel Prize winner should come from tech, right? I think you all agree with me. Next slide, please. So people also ask me, oh, Bertil, what is the most important Nobel Prize? I mean, that is really a hard discussion. But the most popular Nobel Prize, and there was a voting on that, some big newspaper, I think it was the Times or someone like that, that had that in 2001 when the Nobel Prize was 100 years. And actually most vote was given to the 1962 Nobel Prize in Medicine. And that was the discovery of the DNA double strand, the double helix. And obviously this engages people's fantasy. Of course, it was important for creating almost a new field, the molecular biology in a sense, but also this double helix is very aesthetical and obviously opens the mind of curious people for that. And of course, it was Watson, Crick, and Wilkins who got this. I like that prize too, but my favorite prize in next picture was the 1990, next slide, please. Can I get the next slide, please? Thank you. My favorite prize is the Nobel Prize in Chemistry in 1996, and that was the discovery of the fullerenes. Why do I think that is so fantastic? Because that was actually discovery of a new allotrope of carbon, one of the most common elements on our planet. And of course, if we all studied chemistry, on the first page of the chemistry book, it says carbon exists in 2 forms, graphite and diamond. And no one, until 1990, we did not know that there was a third allotrope of carbon. And I think this is important because sometimes we believe we know everything in these modern days. But this prize shows there were fundamental things still to be discovered within chemistry. So this was high basic science, but also then it's been shown so many times that the fullerenes can be used a lot in the nanotechnology. And that proves the point that there are only 2 kinds of research. It's applied research and not yet applied research. I think we should remember that. Next slide, please. And Nobel Prizes by nation. I think there's no surprise that United States is leading this lead by quite a far ahead of UK. And of course, the big countries have most Nobel Prize winners. Sweden, number 5, not too bad, being a smaller country. But of course, that's where the prizes are given out, so they can say they are playing at the home ground. Switzerland, 28, small country. Israel, 12. And most of them have been in the last 15 years. Israel is going up. Mexico had the third prizes, and with that, Mexico is number 2 in Latin America, only succeeded by Argentina. So this is the general picture. If you ask which institution has been as most Nobel Prize winners in academia, that is Harvard University, of course. Next slide, please. So the prize is giving out, as I said, every 10th of December each year in Stockholm. The Peace Prize is giving out in Oslo. And it's a big event. People dress up, and the king of Sweden is giving a prize. And of course, as I told you, this is in the middle of the cold Scandinavian winter and in the middle of the polar night. So this is very special. And on the next slide, I'm saying that the Nobel banquet, after the prize, there's a big dinner with 2,000 guests, including Nobel Prize winners, kings and queens and governmental representatives and scientists, and not the least, 400 students are also invited to this. It's not only the stuffy old guys that comes to this party. That's a very nice party. And of course, Aaron Cichanover was there in 2004 and could enjoy that. So this is the picture I wanted to give you about the Nobel Prize. And of course, in the next slide, I'm starting just giving what we expect here now. Next slide, please. And that is introducing our main talk today, Professor Aaron Cichanover from Israel, from the Israel Institute of Technology. That is a little bit similar like Tech de Monterrey, and for his discovery of eukin-mediated protein degradation. And it was shared with Avram Hershko and Erwin Rhodes. So I'm looking all to Aaron's talk that is going to be about the ethics of around the pandemics, bioethical issues during Corona days, the twilight between the technologies and the sick patients. And of course, this is a very current topic, so we look forward to that. But before we give the floor to Aaron, we should have a small video introducing our speaker, Aaron Cichanover. Thank you for your attention.
Aaron Cichanover is an Israeli biochemist. He won the Nobel Prize in Chemistry in 2004 for the discovery of ubiquitin-mediated protein degradation. The discovery deals with how living organisms get rid of unnecessary or damaged proteins. You could somewhat say he discovered how cells get rid of its garbage. He received his university degree from Hadassah Medical School, Hebrew University in Jerusalem in 1974. He received his doctorate from Technion Israel Institute of Technology in 1981. He did a postdoctoral period at the Whitehead Institute of MIT from 1981 to 1984. In addition to the Nobel Prize, he has received numerous awards, such as the Oscar Award and the Israel Prize.
So should I start?
You can start now, Aaron.
Hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Aaron.
Okay, good morning, Mexico and the rest of the world where people are listening. My name is Aaron Cichanover, and I'm on the Faculty of Medicine of the Technion in Haifa. You see a beautiful picture of the city And if I use my mouse, I'm now sitting here in this building, which is the Faculty of Medicine. And on the right side, you see our teaching hospital. And I'm sorry that this lecture is given to you by Zoom, so I cannot see you all. I cannot sense you. I don't see your body movement. I've been to Mexico many times. I have very good friends in Mexico. Last time was about a year ago. I visited my good friend, Mario Molina, who unfortunately died a few months ago. I was in Yunnan and in some other places. And of course, I love the Mexican food, which I miss a lot. And the Mexican art, Diego Rivera, Frida Kahlo, all the muralists, David Siqueiros, Orozco, and other. It's just wonderful, wonderful country. And I hope to come and visit soon again. So the lecture is about bioethics during the Corona days, but I want to give you just 5 minutes about our discovery and why it's important, because I'm not going to talk about my Nobel discovery, and I'm not going to talk even in what we are doing today in the laboratory. As I told you, I'm currently in my laboratory. We are working every day, all the students and so on, making a nice progress, I hope. And what we discovered is a very important system. As you know, our body is made of proteins. Proteins are the little machines that our body is moving on. For example, the red protein in the blood called hemoglobin. It's a very important protein that carries oxygen from the heart to the tissue, and then it brings back carbon dioxide and exhales it to the air. The antibodies that we are making when we get immunized, vaccinated against COVID-19, are antibodies, the enzymes, the muscles that are helping us move, the bones that keep us safe and stable, and so on and so forth. So altogether, we are built of 25,000 different proteins that are playing a beautiful symphony called the Symphony of Life. And the beauty of this symphony is that it does not need any conductor. Each protein knows when to get in, when to get out, and the Symphony of Life is, as we all enjoy it, each and every one of us, is just wonderful piece of, more than a music, I would say. But the proteins have an Achilles heel. They are complicated structures, and therefore they are extremely sensitive to heat, and we don't need to be in the outside heat. The body temperature, the high body temperature of 37 degrees is enough in order to cause them damage. The oxygen in the air is damaging to the proteins. And so are mutations and irradiation, UV irradiation, and so on. So there is a need to destroy these proteins that are being damaged all the time, and then to make new ones to replace them. So if you think about it, while we are talking, our body destroys protein as we are talking that have been damaged, and at the same time is renewing them by synthesizing new ones. You will not believe it, but in every day, we are destroying something like 5 to 7% of our proteins and making new ones. So within a month or two, all the body proteins, but all of them, have been replaced by new ones. There are interesting questions that are coming out of this observation. If I'm not today, on the 24th of February, what I used to be 2 months ago on the 24th of December, then who am I? How is it that I can still remember, have passion, imagination, emotions, and so on, if all my components have been changed? There is another question, is why we age. How is it that we are replacing the old parts with new parts and we are still aging? But we are not going into it. All I wanted to say that we need a machinery. Every organism, every bacteria, every living organism, every plant needs a machinery that will destroy damaged proteins and we'll replace them with new ones. And when I was a graduate student, I was a PhD student with Avram Hershko. And part of my PhD I did in the United States, in Philadelphia, in the Fox Chase Cancer Center with Ernie Rose. We discovered a very complicated system. The system is composed by itself of more than 2,000 proteins. It is almost 10% of the total proteins of the body, just to destroy proteins. People never imagined that in order to destroy proteins, you need such a complicated machinery, but we shall not go into the mechanism. And this is a machinery that helps us survive, because without the machinery, we are accumulating bad proteins. If the system that we discovered doesn't work properly, we are accumulating bad proteins, and bad proteins, for example, can cause cancer. Cancer is a disease that is caused by accumulation of oncogenes. Oncology is the profession that studies cancer, or proteins that accumulate in the brain and cause, for example, Parkinson's disease or Alzheimer's disease. These are proteins that need to be removed, but they are not being removed. They accumulate and cause damage. So now we know that we didn't even only discover a system, but we discovered a system that doesn't work properly, leads to disease. The next step is that pharmaceutical company walked in, developed drugs, and there are now several good drugs in the market that are combating different diseases, but many, many more drugs will come to the market in the next few years. And the field that we discovered just by curiosity, by asking a simple question of how proteins are degraded in the cell, has now become a very central, fundamentally important field, not only in biology, but also in medicine and in drug development. So this is what we did in the late 70s and early 80s, but we are still continuing working on it. Meanwhile, we are not alone anymore. There are thousands of researchers, pharmaceutical companies that are working on the subject. And it's very nice to take a side view and to see that the little baby that you were responsible for his delivery, has grown up and become an important line of research in biomedicine. So let's put this aside and let's go to the matter of the subject, and that's bioethics during the corona times. And what is it about bioethics? We shouldn't forget that medicine, and I'm a physician by profession, I was educated as a physician, and I'm in a medical school now next to our hospital. We are dealing with human beings, and human beings are like no other organism, and they have their own needs. We cannot do experiments on human beings. They have families when they are sick, and we need to take very good care of them, handle them with, some cases, with a lot of mercy, with a fatal, deadly disease, and so on and so forth. And we are very much limited by what we can do and what we cannot do. And therefore, medicine has always was accompanied by ethical issues. And I want to concentrate in my talk about ethical issues that are related to the contemporary pandemic that we are all fighting nowadays. So I didn't pick up all the problems. I will touch very superficially on each of them. And I picked up about 5 of them, and we'll talk about them one by one. And the first is, of course, treatment priorities. And what is a treatment priority? I don't know about the situation in Mexico now, or how it was at the very beginning, but I know that in the United States, in Italy, and in Spain, when the pandemic erupted, there were thousands and thousands of sick patients, but these countries were short in respirators, in ventilators. They were short in teams, in intensive care unit teams, and the issue was whom to help and whom we should not help. whom to put on a ventilator and to try to rescue his or her life, and whom to tell, we cannot put you on a ventilator, you are in a low priority and you are going to die. You know, we are talking here on basically a death sentence. And the question was, of course, okay, if you are old, we are not going to treat you. Is that right? You can be old, but very healthy. You are still running, you are still healthy. And somebody who is young can have cancer, can have a heart disease, can be limited, and so on and so forth. So is it right to limit, to discriminate people by age? Another issue is inability, handicap, people that are on wheelchair. Shall we tell people like the Nazis on wheelchair, we are not going to treat you because you are limited, because you are useless, because you are not helping society? Is this a criterion? You see, it's a very delicate, very complicated question. And the issue, the nature of ethics is that there are never good answers. There are no black and white answers. Each answer has a pros and a cons, and we are always in a doubt of what we are doing is correct. In Israel, we made a very complicated criteria. It's going via many committees to decide whether a patient will get a treatment or will not get a treatment. We are talking about how much, how many diseases you have, whether you have a chance to live, to survive the diseases, and so on and so forth. We built what we call a basket of considerations. There are many people that are involved in the decision. It's not one person. It's a committee, several committees, and they all have to vote and to make a decision. So it will not be one opinion. But at the end of the day, remember, we are sentencing people to die. So it's a very, very difficult question how to prioritize the treatment. And I just bring you from time to time examples from the literature, and you can see here taken from the issue in Italy. Italian doctors on coronavirus frontline, it happened mostly in North Italy, in the Milan area, face tough calls on whom to save. The other issue are neglected subjects, and that also a big, big issue. I remember in Israel at the very beginning when the pandemic started, people were afraid to go to the hospitals because they were afraid to get infected. Another issue is that in our hospital, most of the hospital was converted from a general hospital to become a corona hospital. They closed the operating theater, they closed the department of oncology, they closed cardiology, they took all the doctors and moved them to treat corona. So we are paying a heavy price for that. Cancer patients are not diagnosed on time. Cancer patients don't get treatment. Cardiac patients don't get catheterization. Operations are being postponed. So we tell, oh, we are going to treat the corona patient. But on the other hand, another patient is dying from another disease. Remember, other diseases didn't take any vacation. Heart diseases and cancer didn't take a sabbatical. They didn't take a weekend off. So, you know, when you have a limited team and limited number of beds, you are neglecting other patients. But not only that, but the whole attention of countries was diverted only to corona. And meanwhile, the earth has continued to warm up. The gases, carbon dioxide, continue to be put in the atmosphere, holes in the ozone, and so on and so forth. And climate change is not going anywhere. We are already suffering from it. We are suffering from extreme heat in the summer, from extreme cold, and you know, Texas that borders Mexico this year had for the first time in decades huge snowstorm and so on. And we are suffering from extinction of many species in nature, and climate change again has not taken a vacation. While all the attention is going to one direction, people will die from the consequences of what's happening on the other side. So neglecting subject is something that is very important. And you see here this cartoon that people are looking at the television on the news on climate change, but meanwhile, the storm of climate change is going to eat them all. So they are going to die, not from COVID because they are protected, but from some other reasons. And here, another one from the Institute of Cancer Research, the ICR in the UK, pandemic to delay cancer advances by nearly 18 months, researchers feel. And 18 months in cancer research in the whole world is a huge amount of time, and this was in April. Now the prediction is that cancer research is going to lag behind by more than 2.5 years. 2.5 years are 30 months, not 18 months. So this is an amazingly long time. So now I'm coming to one of the heaviest issues of the corona. But again, I'm not going to talk about treatment. I'm not going to talk about vaccines. I'm going to talk about the ethical issues that are related to vaccination. And that's, again, has to do with skepticism, misinformation, and so on and so forth. Israel is very advanced in vaccination, probably the most advanced country in the world. We already vaccinated almost 50% of the population, 50%, more than 4 million. Israel is 9 million people only. We are about, I would say, third of Mexico City. The whole country is 30% of Mexico City. We vaccinated with the first shot more than 4 million, and almost 3 million got their second shot. I myself got 2 shots, and you see in my lab, we are working without masks, and everybody is free. We are still not celebrating. We are not flying. The country is still locked. Hospitals are still suffering from overload of patients, but people that are vaccinated feel much more secure. But even in Israel, there is a huge anti-vaccination movement. There are people that refuse to get vaccinated. Most of them say that they heard that the vaccine will cause infertility in women, they will kill them, they will do this, they will do that. It's all based on what I say fake news that are scattered all over. In the United States, it's even worse. The anti-vaccine movement is huge. And I will not go into what's behind the mind of these people that don't believe in something that doesn't exist. Because I can tell you one thing, in Israel, 4 million people got the vaccination, about 100 times more than the people that were participating in the third phase, in phase 3 clinical trial of Pfizer. Pfizer did the experiment, the phase 3 clinical trial on 40,000 patients, 40,000, and they measured how they are protected. In Israel, we have now the largest experiment in the world, and every patient in Israel, every citizen that is vaccinated got a green card. I have it in my pocket. It says that I was vaccinated by this and this lot of Pfizer on this and this date, and I can enter different places. So everything is recorded. There was not a single case, one single case, listen to me, of severe side effect that is related directly to the vaccination. 4 million people without one single side effect. I will not go into the mechanism of the vaccine, which is very simple. It's ingenious how simple it is. But Pfizer didn't invent anything. They collected information. Actually, the information that was mentioned by Professor Bertil Anderson, it is based on this most famous Nobel Prize, the discovery of the DNA that led to the discovery of the messenger RNA and how proteins are made, but we'll not go into it. So, but nevertheless, people don't believe in it. Maybe it has to do with trust in the government. And I want to bring you, look what's going on in the United States. I just brought you a short collection. Look at the lower right angle. Trust in God, not in vaccines. People say, don't trust vaccines. They do nothing. In the middle, you see a syringe, and it say no vaccine. On the left side, this blonde woman say no mandatory vaccination, no microchipping, no tyranny. They call the movement, the pro-vaccination movement, tyranny, no fear. Don't be afraid not to get vaccinated. Look here what's going on. This is a planned global power. Look at the upper right side. Grab the messenger RNA vaccine. Will kill million more than COVID-19. If you get the vaccine, million more will be dead than getting the corona. It's so stupid that it's just doesn't worth any, but nevertheless, that's what people believe. And when people, these days people are not too deep. They are on Twitter, they are on Facebook, they are on WhatsApp, they hear something, they believe in it, then they scatter it to all their friends and family members, and it's just amazing what's going on. But nevertheless, the anti-vaccination movement has also some deep and truthful root in history. And I want to bring you one very sad case. There are several sad cases. I want to talk about another fake news before I go to the real roots. One case is, of course, Andrew Wakefield, who is a physician. He's an English physician that said that the vaccine against mumps, rubella, and measles is causing autism. Autism. So mother said, am I going to vaccinate my child against these three diseases? No way if I'm going to get an autistic child. And he is a physician. He wrote a book about it, and it took billions of dollars and numerous experiments that in order, he wrote several books. You see the covers of the two of them. And it took billions of dollars in order to prove to the world that this is not true. I will not go into it. See vaccines do not cause autism. And this is coming from very prestigious scientific periodical. Vaccine ingredients do not cause autism. There is no link between vaccine and autism. And all those are experiments. We had to go back and to look into population of vaccinated kids in order to publish these papers. But nobody reads these journals. Who reads them? Only physicians and scientists. People are more affected by Andrew Wakefield, and the damage that was caused is huge. Measles came back again, and other diseases came back again and killed hundreds and thousands of children and adults because of the disease, because they were not vaccinated. And I can bring you other samples. And then many books have to be written on it. And on the left side, you see a counter book that says the doctor who cheated the world. This is a heavy criticism on Wakefield. And now he's completely boycotted. He was kicked out of all his positions and so on. But the damage that he caused by what he wrote is irreparable and irreversible. Now I'm coming to something that is very interesting. That is a poll that was made in America about people that were asked whether they are going to take the vaccine or they are not going to take the vaccine. So those that said that they will take the vaccine are on the left side, the dark brown, and those that say that they are not going to take the vaccine are on the right side. And look at the numbers. Among people that are age 60 and older, only 12% say that they will not take the vaccine. So most of them are feeling safe enough to take the vaccine. People like me, I'm now 73 years old, I feel extremely safe. But the black people, look at the black people, the line before the end, 40% say that they don't take the vaccine. They will not, and indeed they don't take it. If you go now to the United States, you see that the lowest percentage of vaccinated people are among the black minority. Now you ask yourself, how can it be? These people that are poor, that are living in poverty, that are living in slums, are most vulnerable to the disease. The corona is hitting them the heaviest. A lot of the number of black people that are being hit by corona in the United States is more than double their proportion in the population. So how is it that the people that are most vulnerable are also the most resisting the treatment? And here we are coming to a very touchy point. And this is coming, I'll give you one example. Remember that the black in America are still discriminated. Now it's okay, relatively okay, but they are still discriminated. But in the 50s and 60s and even more, they were completely out of the community. Remember John Kennedy and the busing in Mississippi. He had to send his brother, Bob Kennedy, in order to enforce mixed busing in Mississippi and in Alabama. against the will of the white people, to put black people along with white people in the bus. The white people in America simply objected it. They didn't want a black people even to sit next to them in the bus. They believe that they are dirty, that something will happen to them, the discrimination. Remember the Ku Klux Klan? And all this atmosphere in America led to the thinking by physicians in America that the black people can be used as experimental animals, as rabbits. And I'll bring you one example. It's called the Tuskegee experiment. And what happened there, it started in 1932 and it ended in 1972. It took 40 years. They decided to follow the development of syphilis. Now, we are not talking fake news. We are talking reality, cruel and disgusting reality. They took people, black people that have syphilis, told them that they are going to treat them, but they did not treat them. They gave them water. They gave them no treatment. Why? Because they wanted to see the natural development of the disease. They wanted to see how the syphilis bacteria is crawling into the brain, how their brain and the other systems are affected until they die. 400 people were used as laboratory animals to satisfy the fucked up curiosity of some American physicians, authorized physicians of the FDA, in order to see how the disease is developing naturally. Only in 72, things became known and the experiment was stopped. Meanwhile, out of the 400, more than 200 died of the disease. Then the physicians were looking at them dying. And President Clinton, when he came to the White House, apologized deeply to the black community. I'm bringing you this example. And you see here the white doctor that inject water or some saline into the vein of a black person, telling him that he gets a treatment, but actually he doesn't get a treatment. So you can imagine that one of the most important things anywhere in the world, and in Israel we lost it now completely, is the trust between the population and the government. In Israel, except for the prime minister himself, I think, nobody believes the government. The prime minister in Israel is probably the only person that believes himself. But in Israel, the government lost completely the trust of the people. When the government tell people not to go out, they go out. When they tell them not to go to the synagogue to pray or to the churches, they do go to pray. When they tell them not to assemble, they do assemble. Nobody believes the Israeli government anymore. So the trust between people and the government is essential in order to defeat any pandemic. And no wonder that the black community in America lost trust in the American government. And therefore, despite being the most sensitive to the disease and being hit the most difficult by the disease, they are getting the vaccination the least out of all the other sectors in the American population. And I brought you just one example. I can bring you more. Now, there is, of course, another issue. The vaccines cost money. Not all countries can buy it. Israel is relatively rich. They bought vaccine for the whole population. Not only that, but now people are thinking that we might need a third injection every half year. We shall need, and Israel is already buying the third shot for every citizen. But other countries in Africa, maybe even in Central America and in South America, in Asia, don't have the, and this is generating huge inequality between rich countries and poor countries, which tells you all that equality is something that is very far from us, both on the personal level and on the national level. So the supply of vaccine to different countries is, of course, dependent on the wealth of the country, because the pharmaceutical companies are private enterprises. They don't belong to any government. They want to make money. They want the share to go up in value, and all what they care about is money. So let's go to the fourth one. And the fourth one is, again, something that happened only, well, in the pandemic, it showed up in the most prominent way, but it's a new phenomenon to us that came to the world along with the development of the social networks like Twitter and Facebook and WhatsApp and the rapid communication that can, and that's the infodemic. It's the pandemic of the information or the misinformation and the disinformation. And it also linked to number 3, to the fake news about a vaccination. And I just bring you 2 examples. One is the outgoing president of the United States, that the number of the lies that he distributed all over the place along the time is probably exceeding much the number of the true things that he told his people. By the way, he's not unique. Our prime minister is about the same in how rapidly they can lie. And I bring you, initially President Trump completely denied that there is a pandemic. Then he said, oh, we are going to overcome it. It's already beyond. And then he came with all kinds of treatment, like putting Clorox, that is chlor solution into the vein. He didn't understand that the Clorox is there in order to disinfect, syringes and tables, but he thought that, okay, let's use it as a drug. And all kinds of things that caused America. Actually, America, it's amazing. For me, America was a country. I grew up in America for many years. I was educated in its best institution at Harvard Medical School that was mentioned by Bertil in his introductory comments at MIT. I spent 4 years at MIT as a postdoctoral fellow, and then in Washington University in St. Louis. I grew up in the best of the American institution. And for me, America was like the queen of the world. And it turned out that it's a very poor queen. Look what happened in the most powerful country in the world, the number of the dead people exceeding 500,000. Just yesterday, there was a memorial day when President Biden lamented the 500,000 patients that died out of Corona. 500,000 people America lost to Corona because of negligence, because of its structure, because of lack of social network. They cannot even vaccinate their population. They don't have a social network, a health insurance system. What Barack Obama tried to build with a system, a health insurance system that Obamacare, that will help some of the people, President Trump destroyed completely. So by misinformation, I think that the president caused a huge damage to his country. And take Madonna, a woman that many follow, millions of people follow. And she said that initially, before the vaccines came, she said that there are vaccines already, but it's all conspiracy. The rich people keep it for themselves, and then they will sell it to the poor people for a lot of money. At that time, there was no vaccines at all, and she wanted to shame Bill Gates and many other American rich people for conspiracy. So, and they are not the only one. I mean, it was like many people distributed in the social networks all kinds of faked and stupid news that caused, I would say, killed people. We are not joking here. You can say something faked in a joking way or not. This costs life. Let's put it straight forward and bluntly. The faked information that was distributed by many people, including by the President of America, somehow cost life, apparently. So the past President of America. So, we should be very careful about what we say and what we do. You see here that science and policy collide during the pandemic. They don't go together. I remember the big fight of Anthony Fauci, the tsar of the COVID-19, who did not agree at all with his president and was basically fired by President Trump, and he is the physician. He's the world expert on pandemics. Nobody heard him, and so on and so forth. Let's go to the last one before we conclude, and that's inequality and discrimination, racism. And it's true all over the world. Whenever people are suffering, discrimination comes up to the surface. I think that Bertil even mentioned this too in his introductory comment. You know, when there was a depression in Germany, anti-Semitism came up, the Jews are to be blamed, but it was not only the Jews, and then Hitler came to power, and the rest is history. 6 million Jews were slaughtered, by 20 million people were killed during World War II. 20 million people. I think that more Russians than Jews were killed during the war, not to say French, German, and other European. Big disaster. And this is because when people are stressed, the leaders, in order to stay in power, will always look for the blamed one, whom to blame. And feelings of hatred are starting to evolve. And I remember, of course, you know, it started in America with a black person in Minnesota that was suffocated to death, basically was bluntly murdered by a policeman. Let's say it straightforward, who with his knee pressed against his neck and didn't let blood flow into his brain, and he died. But then there were many demonstrations, and the big movement started in America that called Black Lives Matter. You know, black lives are not, we are not chicken. You cannot slaughter us, and black lives do matter. But, you know, even science, it came out in science that even we, as scientists that are supposed to be the most objective people in the world, those that look only into facts, those they should not look into gender, into color, into anything that Alfred Nobel in his will that was shown to you by Professor Anderson said that the prize should be given to anybody with no discrimination or whatsoever of any factor. Yes, even in science, we are racist. And look at this. I just cut out for you from science and from nature, from Cell. Science has racism problem. We are very slow in moving movement. It's not racism, it's discrimination, but it's, and then black people in the United States find it very hard to get promoted in the biomedical world, in the universities, in the hospital. And look at the right side, white senior academics still resist recognizing racism. They even don't recognize that there is a problem. So, and I think that maybe if something positive will come out of the pandemic, I think that the scientific community is trying to do its best, first to recognize the problem, and then to develop tools to tackle it. So I think that time is coming to an end, and I wanted to highlight for you very briefly some of the problems that are unique to the pandemic, but basically they are not unique only to the pandemic. Bioethics is accompanying us all along in medicine, and there are many, many issues in medicine that are coming to light nowadays that are accompanying the development in technology. I just want to mention the very recent Nobel Prize in chemistry that went to two women for an ingenious discovery and invention, to Jennifer Doudna from Berkeley and to Emmanuel Charpentier from the Max Planck Institute in Germany, for discovering, inventing, it's like half-half, the technology that is called CRISPR-Cas, or gene editing, so they can change a gene. It has a huge benefit. It will have a huge benefit in fighting genetic diseases, in fighting cancer, by repairing genes. It will have a huge benefit in agriculture by improving crops against all kinds of harming agents, from locusts to fungi to all other. It will improve agriculture in a big way. But on the other hand, and at the same time, it carries a lot of dangers. It carries a danger that we shall decide, and there was already a trial in China, to change people while they are still embryos. That women, mothers, future mothers will decide that they want the kid to be a basketball player, and they will change, or they will decide that they want to change it. So the kid will develop to be high and muscular, and maybe we shall be able to affect the character of the people, and people are thinking about the Nazis and so on and so forth. I don't want to go into it, but all I want to say, I just want to give you a teaser, that technology, doesn't matter which technology, always will come with ethical issues and with a price. Think about the car. The car, how can we imagine the world without car? They came with road accidents. You know, there are road accidents, and we have to take people to trial for killing people and so on and so forth. Every technology has an ethical issue or a damage that it causes. And we have to be very careful about introducing a technology and about dealing with the ethical issues that each technology is bringing with it. So I wanted to talk about a contemporary problem, which is the pandemic of the COVID-19, the SARS-CoV-2, but you should remember that it's not limited to it, and every single technology, you know, we are talking about CT scan, it can cause, you know, if you're using it a lot, it can cause cancer by irradiation, and so on and so forth. The sequencing of our genome, the information can leak out, because in the future, medicine will use our sequence in order to find diseases, to predict diseases, to prevent diseases, and so on. The information may leak out, and they may leak out to agencies to which it should not leak out. For example, to governments, to insurance companies, to so on. So our privacy will be penetrated in the deepest possible way. And I can go on and on and on and on and tell you about the changes that modern medicine is bringing with us. And again, we should not forget, we are not in veterinary medicine. We are in human medicine. And human beings are unique creatures. And they have privacy, they have sensitivities, they have lives, they have families, they have beloved ones. And we are living, we are not isolated. We are living, during our life, we are creating a whole world that surrounds us and to which we are connected emotionally. And those, you know, a disease at the end of the day is a physical damage to our biological system. But we should not forget for a minute that any disease, doesn't matter how physical it is, also affecting the more vague circles that surround us, which are the social and the psychological and the emotional circles. And therefore, the ethical issue has now become central to an integral part of the physical sciences, and we should take it into consideration every step that we are making. So thank you very much for your attention. And again, I hope to visit Mexico soon. You know, Zoom cannot continue like that for any longer time. I hate it, I must tell you. I was sitting now for the last hour in my office and talking to an empty screen. I didn't see any of you. I didn't talk to you. I didn't see your body movement. I didn't see anything. It's really amazingly deprived of exactly what we were talking about, the human touch. We are missing the human touch, which is our basic fundamental characteristic. And I hope that we shall be able to physically meet soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Aaron. This is a very passionate talk about something that is very serious, I think, you know, bioethics. And I think the pandemic has highlighted bioethics, various aspects of bioethics. And as you said, there are rings on the water. we as scientists cannot pretend that this has to be put in this context. And although you have not seen your audience here, they also have many questions here for you. And so if we can take a few questions, we are a little bit late, but let's take a few questions. So you have touched upon this about the misinformation, and that has made people reflect. So how can we improve the spread of scientific knowledge when most of it is actually published for the insiders, while the misinformation is actually targeted toward the public? And how do we proceed to make science and technology get closer to people, to avoid misinformation and disinformation? So I think these are actually important questions in general, and also for us scientists. We cannot hide within our own room, so to speak. Do you have comments on that?
Yeah, actually you gave the answer in very short, and I'll try to expand on it a little bit. Scientists tend to live in an ivory tower. They live in their laboratories, in the universities, out of the world, and they don't communicate. I think that the only way to dissipate misinformation is for scientists to talk in a simple language and to communicate with the public. Actually, I see it as an obligation. You know, the money in most countries for science is coming from the public universities, the research grants, everything is coming from the public. And the public is not getting back it's getting back the products, the drugs, the developments, but the public doesn't get back the explanation of what's going on. And I think that scientists, I know that it's a little bit difficult to explain to everybody in a simple language what we are doing in the laboratories, but it's possible. I think that, and in Israel, we are trying to do it, we call it science on the bar. Scientists are going to coffee shops and talk to the public. And I can tell you, Bertil, it's flooded. People are hungry to hear it. And the Technion is doing it, the Weizmann Institute is doing it. And I myself just gave a talk, an interview with Danny Shechtman a few days ago. Thousands of people attended it. But it's nothing, it's a drop in the bucket. Yeah. I think that scientists should get out, and also the newspaper should change. You cannot do it alone. I think that the media has become very cheap. They are interested in rape. They are interested in fire, that people got burned. They are interested in road accident. People want to see blood. They're interested in gossip, in divorce, in beating women, in all this. If serious newspapers will talk about science and every day will bring something to the attention of the people. You are taking any newspaper, not only in Israel, anywhere in the world. It's all yellow. It's cheap news that works for nothing. The next day you don't remember it even. Mm-hmm. Instead of bringing the good things in society, the developments, and it has also to do with education. We should bring elementary school kids to the laboratories. Tell them from the very beginning what we do. We need to develop an ecosystem. It's not only scientists going to the bar. It's the media. It's all the media. We should conquer the social networks. Scientists should come on Facebook, on Twitter, everywhere in the world. Education, kids should come to universities, and adult education. A country should, instead of, in Israel, you probably were in Israel after the election, we put 33 ministries that about 30 of them are useless, completely useless, in order to satisfy some coalition needs. Instead of building an institute for science dissemination that will take under its wings, the communication with the society, we waste the money on nonsense. So I think that what I want to say in one sentence, we need to build a communication channel to the public that has multi facets, multi-factors built into it. And then the people will, people don't understand. You know what people tell me? People tell me, Aaron, I don't believe in science. I believe in God. I tell them, great that you believe in God. God is somebody to believe in. Science, you should not believe. Science is not a religion. Science is a set of testable hypotheses that you go to the lab and either prove or don't prove. And then I show them my cell phone And I tell them, this is science. The cell phone is science. They don't know. They don't even make the connection about communication. Zoom is science. Microphone is science. Loudspeaker is science. Everything is science. People don't, they completely, they go to the pharmacy. When you tell them about drug, you ask them, how do you get a drug? What is a drug? They say, we go to the pharmacy with a prescription and we buy a drug. They have no clue what is behind the drug. How did it come to the pharmacy? Then you ask them, how did it come to the pharmacy? They tell you by a truck. They think that there are trucks that bring drugs. Where they bring it from? From the factory. What is about the factory? How did they make the drug? People have no clue what's going on. And I think that we must educate the people.
Yeah. I think, Aaron, you hit the hammer on the nail is education. And education, maybe university, we have to be critical. It's been too much fact remembrance rather than critical thinking and evaluation, source evaluation. And I think that's something we may have to reintroduce more into our curricula at universities and other schools as well. I have questions here related to what you're talking about. What is your feeling here? We're talking about society ethics and society medicine. Do you have a feeling how social science has contributed to this debate? I mean, you're a life scientist having this now, but what about social science? And then I have got a very down-to-earth questions. What would you say to a person afraid of getting vaccinated? So these are one philosophical question and one very down-to-earth question.
So let's start with the down-to-earth. To the one who is afraid to get a vaccination, I will tell him simply, go and get vaccinated. But that will be not enough because it will not convince him. I will go and explain him. And that's another thing that at least, I was in Israel during the whole pandemic. The Ministry of Health of Israel failed colossally in explaining to the people. Every day they had to come with animations to Twitter, to Facebook, to the television, bombarded 24 hours a day, every hour, and to explain to the people what is a protein, what is an antibody, how it's made, how it cannot be that the vaccine has any danger in it. It's not even a weakened virus. It's not a DNA. People say, it's going to change my genome. Explain to people what is a genome. Explain to them what is a DNA, explain to them what is an RNA, that the vaccine is being destroyed in 5 minutes. Nothing remained out of it, and so on and so forth. Again, the communication is missing. So I would tell him, go and vaccinate, because the fake news that you hear about a side effect that does not exist is millionfold worse than less dangerous than the disease itself. Go to the hospital and see how people are hungry to air, how they die out of lack of air because of the corona, and the vaccine will save you. And now everybody knows from the Israeli experience, now it's coming from the UK, that the vaccines are extremely efficient. They have no side effect. But again, people will not convince just by statement. They need explanation. You should take them and explain them. And there are ways to explain to millions of people by bombarding them. Instead, we left all the platform empty to these anti-vaxxers and to these stupid people who tell people not to get vaccinated. It's our failure as scientists, as politicians, as media people, that we did not catch the platform and play the game there correctly. Now let's go to the first one. And the first one was about social science.
Yeah, how has social science contributed to this debate that we are?
I think that social sciences, and especially maybe religious sciences, should really take part in this game. It's very important. But on the other hand, we are seeing a great bankruptcy of humanities. One of the discussions all over the world that people don't go to humanities because there is no money there. You don't find jobs and so on. So everybody is going to the .com, to medicine, to engineering, to something that will make them living. But if people noted, what I was talking during all my talk was social science. I didn't talk about technology. I didn't talk about science. I didn't explain what DNA is. I didn't explain, I'm a scientist, I'm a physician, and I'm a biologist. I didn't say almost one word. I talked about social sciences because we are human beings. And I think that we need this talk between scientists and social scientists and humanists and legislators. It's not only and psychologists and social workers in order to approach people rationally. We cannot talk to them with a technical jargon. They will not get it. We need to talk to them in a language that they understand, but will not give them a feeling that we are patriarchal, that we are above them, that we are talking to them in a language that they don't understand. We need to talk to them in the eyes height and tell them that we are like them. When I tell people, when I talk to kids in Israel and people say, oh, you must be genius, it's the Nobel Prize. And I said to them, it's a blah blah. I grew up in a middle class family in poor Israel of the 50s that we are hardly have a food to eat. And I have 2 hands and I have 2 legs and I have 2 eyes. I'm a human being like you. I curse. I went to a youth movement. I'm not different from you by nothing, by really nothing. So I think that if you talk to people in their eyes height and explain them, the only thing that I know a little bit better because I studied medicine, but somebody else who studied engineering know a little bit more on engineering. Somebody else who studied sociology knows more about sociology. People are getting offended if you are if you're showing them supremacy feelings, if you give them a feeling that you are above them. And I think that, first of all, I don't believe that we are above them. I simply don't believe it. And second, it doesn't matter whom. Doesn't matter. I cannot live in my lab without the cleaning guy. If the lab will not be cleaned, we cannot work. So, every morning we make coffee together. I greet him, they greet me. And we have to, we are living in a society, and every link in the society is important for its existence. It's one brick will fall out, the building will collapse. So we need the social scientists, and we need the philosophers, and we need the clergymen, and we need the social workers, and we need the psychologists in order to generate a talk understandable to everybody.
So maybe we should take this as the last question because time is going by. So if we had this discussion, say in October 2019, well before the pandemic, you, from your medical experience, did you predict or had a feeling that this could happen, or are you surprised yourself?
Yeah, it's a very good question. Of course, I couldn't have predicted COVID-19. No way in the world. But living, first of all, I'm an Israeli. So, in my life, I've gone through several wars. I was born into a war in 47. Then there was the 56 war. Then there was the 73 war. Then there was the Lebanon war. I myself an officer in the Israeli army. So I fought myself. So I'm a little bit close to, I would say, the possibility of a disaster. Let's put it this way. I'm not living in Switzerland. So I'm kind of ready to these things. But I think that this important question has to do with our belief that our life is this moment. We are living the moment. Think about climate change. Every scientist will tell you it's coming. Every scientist will tell you that in 50 years, the planet will be destroyed, that it's going to be disastrous. But people say, who cares? Let's have my children worry about it. I don't care. I will still buy a car that emits carbon dioxide 1 kilo per kilometer. I will still use fossil oil. I will still do whatever. And people are smoking. Think about people that are smoking. They are burning themselves to death. They are inflicting cancer on themselves. But they say, no, Churchill also smoked for 50 years and nothing happened to him. They believe in miracles. People are, unless it's coming, it's sitting in your room, people do not believe in it. They are not ready themselves. In Israel, every war is a surprise. 73, surprise. This, surprise. As if we don't have an intelligence and so on and so forth. There is this human tendency to enjoy the minute. Okay, now we are living in a paradise. What in hell is COVID-19? But the world did suffer pandemics. The world did suffer the 1918 flu. The world did suffer the mid-19th century cholera. The world did suffer polio in the 50s. I remember Israel was stricken by polio. My parents were shivering to their spine that their little kid will contract polio. So if I would have been told in 2019, in a general conversation, I would say we need to prepare ourselves to a disaster. And in Israel, we know what a disaster can be. You know, Israel will get an earthquake. There is no doubt about it. Everybody knows that we'll get a disaster. The level of preparedness in Israel for earthquake is zero. They say that there are cycles every 100 years, and now we are approaching the 100 years of the 1929 earthquake that split, because we are sitting on the Syrian-African break. So the collision, the layer collision area between Asia and Africa, you know, the Dead Sea and the Jordan Valley. And people know that it will come, but nobody really gives a shit. And so I think that in Israel, we should prepare ourselves to 3 disasters: pandemic, like the whole world, earthquake, and our enemies. You know, our nice neighbors that want to eat us alive every breakfast. So it will come. There is no doubt it will come. And I would have said in 2019, yes, get ready. But it's against nature's people.
Yeah. Thank you, Aaron. I think you have given us a fantastic hour here of your insights, your knowledge, and your passion, and lifting this question to a bigger horizon. I think everyone around in the world looking at this are applauding you at this very moment. But of course, you are missing out. You already mentioned that you are missing out on this. You have to come to Tech Monterrey and meet all the fantastic students here, which I have had the privilege to do. And also the professors, the medical, the technology, and so on. It's Tech de Monterrey is really a Technion of Mexico, and you will love it here. And you will also get some Mexican food, we promise you. So with that, I think we should thank you, Aaron. I should thank the organizers that have kept the technology and things going. And we should thank all the viewers here, faculty and students in Mexico and other places. So thank you very much.